Welcome to Ciao Bella, hosted by me, Erica Firpo, a travel journalist based in Rome. Each episode of Ciao Bella, I sit down with Italy's creators, contemporary artists and artisans, designers, culinary experts, heritage brands, and innovative aesthetes, and more who are defining and redefining 21st century Italy. Pull up a chair and join in.
Hey, welcome back to Ciao Bella. I'm here today with Julia Prestia, the owner of Venturini Baldini, a winery in Emilia Romagna producing organic Lambrusco and sparkling rosé wines. Welcome, Julia.
Hi, Erica. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
I'm great. It's a true pleasure to have you. I love Lambrusco and I love talking about Emilia Romagna, so you might just be the perfect guest today.
Thank you. I think that's a love we share. So I'm more than happy to answer all of your questions and talk a bit more about Emilia Romagna and Lambrusco and anything else.
Well, I really want to get into a little bit of the history and talk about your winery, but I did a little bit of research on you, and your backstory is quite intriguing because you're not from Emilia Romagna and your background didn't start out in wine. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
That's right. I'm actually Austrian. I come from a family that always had a great interest in wine. So there is a bit of a connection with the wine world, but it's true. My background is actually in finance and business. So I come from a completely different side. I've spent many years abroad, but I fell in love with an Italian. So at one point we decided to come back to Italy, and yes, and since then it is my home, my much loved home, and especially Emilia Romagna has become an area that I really consider home, and I've fallen in love with it.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, go. Yeah.
So Emilia Romagna is your home, but your husband, I know Giuseppe, is from Palermo.
That's right. He's from Palermo. So he's from. We met in London many years ago, and he has worked in wine in Sicily already. So that's a little bit also the connection of how we ended up here. But we both discovered this area, and you can probably say we sort of meet in the middle. Me being Austrian, he being Sicilian. We ended up in the middle, geographically speaking.
That's the perfect, it's like the crossroads right there in Emilia Romagna. So exactly where are you guys? If you can give us just almost like a cartographical reference of where you are in Emilia Romagna.
So our province is Reggio Emilia, and we are just between, almost equidistant between Parma and Reggio Emilia. We're on where the Apennine, the foothills of the Apennine start. We're literally, when you come into our estate, the hills start and you go up from the flat land to about 450 meters in the Apennine. So there's a beautiful view from one of the top parts of our estate, where on one side you see the whole flat land going all the way to the Alps, and on the other side you see the very soft hills of what they call the Tuscan Emilian Apennine, which is really one of the most beautiful hilly landscapes that I've seen.
It's so funny when you were describing that. It reminded me a few years back. I was visiting a small manufacturer of prosciutto. I was in Parma, and he was talking about how one of the most important things when you make prosciutto is having the windows open, because air comes in from the sea and air comes in from the mountains. And I don't know why I found that like that combination of the aeration and how it has to be mountain air and sea air was like perfect to creating the perfect prosciutto. And it's so funny because I was in Parma, I was right around Parma, and it's pretty flat, and I just really never was able to kind of visualize that whole mountain aspect until you just described it.
And it's true, because when and I realize when people come to us, it's almost like it's a hidden world in it. Once you pass the gate and you make your way up, literally up into the hills, people discover that it's almost like there's a whole world out there in Emilia, which the majority don't. A lot of people know the area, obviously, but often tourists associate only the flat land with it, and then you have this magnificent hillside, which is really truly stunning.
Have you ever heard of the expression? So I think a lot of people, Italy has 20 regions and Emilia Romagna is one of the 20 regions, but Emilia Romagna is actually kind of two entities put together.
That's right. Yeah.
And there's an expression in Italian I hope I get it right. I'm going to translate it into English, which is that you're in Emilia if they offer you a glass of water. So if you go into a cafe and they offer you a glass of water, you're in Emilia. But you're in Romagna if they offer you a glass of wine. Have you ever heard of that before?
No, I haven't actually.
I'm gonna check to make sure I didn't flip it, but it's like one of those really funny things that I always thought was really charming too. Let's talk a little bit then. Now you've set the scene. We're in the foothills, beautiful green, and we are at Venturini Baldini. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of your wine estate?
Sure. Venturini Baldini is really a historic estate in Emilia. And it's size-wise, we're about 300 acres or 130 hectares. You have to imagine it's a bit like a Tuscan estate. So it goes on the hills. It has a lot of cypress-lined roads. It's an organic estate. So it's there are forests and lakes, and it's really which for me personally is very important. But it's a perfect ecosystem. Organic ecosystem that we try to keep as little touched as possible. So it dates back to the early 16th century and used to be more, for most of the time, it used to be a private residence for the governors of Reggio Emilia and other noble families from the area. And in 1976, husband and wife, Venturini and Baldini, founded the estate as a winery, and they started to commercially produce wine. And I have to say, we today build on what they have set in place, and what they have also with an amazing vision that already going back many years have started to build, because they
were organic to begin with.
They very early on became organic. So they started in 76. I think about less than 10 years later, they were certified organic. So at the end of the 80s, which was one of the first wineries in Italy. I mean, go back to the 80s, not a lot of places were certified organic. So this was very visionary, very, I think also innovative. They also started from the beginning to produce what we now call a new generation of Lambrusco. So they went back, which actually Lambrusco used to be like this. Lambrusco used to be a dry wine, not a overly sweet wine. And Venturini and Baldini, when they started producing their wines, they immediately started with dry spumante as well. So using much longer fermentation methods. And again, using also what I described here as a more Tuscan type of estate with a manual harvest, much lower yield from the vineyards, much higher selection of the grapes. So that's why I'm grateful for what they have put in place, because it's a great base to start from. And in 2015, my husband and I, we literally fell in love with the estate. We fell in love with the opportunity of also promoting what we truly believe in, an amazing Lambrusco, which now I can see is really, there's a real renaissance of Lambrusco, to say so. And Venturini Baldini at that time had, you can call it a bit like a classic succession problem. So their children didn't want to continue the estate and couldn't continue. So when we came in, there was quite a bit of work to do to rejuvenate some of the estate, but also obviously with our enologist Carlo Ferrini, we relaunched to some extent the wines. We launched new wines, which then won us very interesting prices. So I feel like we've done quite a few things from 2015, and now we see we have quite a stable place now. Yeah.
So that's, I think you guys, it sounds like you really did your research and found, when people talk about passion projects, found something that really spoke to your passions of wine, of organic farming, and organic winemaking.
in our case, it is we have both spumante and frizzante. So frizzante, you have different levels of bar in terms of pressure, but you also have different fermentation periods. So in our case, the spumante has they're both produced with chamat, which is in the steel tank. But for example, the spumante has a much longer fermentation period, so it goes up to about 6 months, while the frizzante at least tends to have between 2 to 3 months of fermentation period. The spumante that I referred to, which is Rubino del Cero, which Venturini Baldini created almost more than 30 years ago now, was also a return to a more elegant Lambrusco. So it is still known as one of the most probably elegant versions of Lambrusco. Then our frizzante, for example, Marchese Manodore is one of our most famous frizzante Lambrusco, is slightly more everyday. So that's not it's not judging quality or anything. It's just a different appearance. And if that makes sense.
Now I have in front of me, but I'm not going to open it because it's a little too early, but I have the Cadalvento Lambrusco Spumante.
Yes. Yeah.
And that is in the Spumante world. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So the Cadalvento for us is very important. Cadalvento is very important. It's much loved. It's a wine that we are very excited about, and again, which I said is really important for us. When we created the Cadalvento, it was again building a little bit on what we perceived as very innovative from Venturini Baldini already, looking at our autochthonous grapes, but rethinking them in a way, if that explains it. So we used 2 different grapes that normally are not blended. It's Sobara, which you've referred to before, which is an amazing grape. It's a bit of a difficult grape, but it's an amazing grape.
It's local to Modena, correct?
Modena, exactly. So it's traditional from the Modena area. It has a really beautiful acidity, and it gives that a little bit more rosé colored. So it's a lighter colored Lambrusco wine. And we have blended it with Grasparossa, which is a more mellow and rounded grape. And the 2 of them, for us, create a very versatile, beautiful, autochthonous Lambrusco, which at the same time is it goes a little bit also in the rosé trend. So we find that it's a really important wine for us for many reasons, not only because it is autochthonous, it is a spumante that builds on our winemaking tradition, but also one that introduces a Lambrusco to people who maybe didn't think of getting a Lambrusco, and also to open it up to completely different opportunities in terms of pairing. So you can use Lambrusco in a different way without losing, you're still true to your origins in a way. I don't know if I explained that correctly, but it did
to the non-wine knowledgeable, which would be me. I don't have it. I only know what I like to drink. You explained it really well.
Thank you. I think you can tell it's really close to our heart because we obviously we thought about it. I think it symbolizes really nicely our vision of what we're trying to create. We want to show the best of Emilian winemaking. So we have predominantly autochthonous grapes. We have a few international grapes, but predominantly indigenous autochthonous grapes. It is important to continue that tradition of what is really Emilian winemaking. So I'm not trying to invent the wheel from something that has nothing to do with Emilia. So it's really important to stick to that. But at the same time, it's very exciting to open up our area and show the diversity and show the variety also of what Emilia can offer, which goes beyond what sometimes people perceive, especially the sweeter Lambrusco, but there is so much diversity out there, and there's so many different grape varieties. So that is a really important point for us, and I think that's why the Cadalvento fits really nicely in that picture.
It's funny. Earlier, before when we were just chatting before we started the interview, I was telling you why I liked Emilia Romagna, and I said, it's got a lot of history, but it's got a lot of innovation, and it has, aside from the amazing food and the wonderful wines, one of the most beautiful things for me about Emilia Romagna is there are these historic villas and then these contemporary cities, or not even, I wouldn't even call them contemporary cities. There's contemporary art centers. There's the whole automotive industry.
Yeah.
Emilia Romagna is one of those. It is one of those best of Italy places that highlights a lot of the tradition and a lot of the innovation of Italy, which is what you're saying you're doing in the bottle. So I think that's a nice parallel. One of the things as you were talking, I was just thinking about a little research. I don't know if I mentioned this. My husband's an archaeologist with a specialty in ancient Rome, and when he travels around Italy, he only looks at archaeology, and for the good and the bad. And sometimes it's great because, for example, like one of the things I didn't know that Lambrusco, the word actually comes from vita labrusca,
yes,
which is Latin for wild vine. And Virgil talked about it, and Strabo wrote about it. And I guess they identified this wild grapevine, and that over 2 millennia ago, and that is very, very deeply rooted in Emilia Romagna winemaking tradition.
Absolutely. And when you look at how many varieties, because people, us included, we speak of Lambrusco as one category, but actually there are so many different Lambrusco grapes. I mean, I think there are 11 or 12. I'm not 100% sure. I need to check my books, but we have already 9 on the estate. So Lambrusco is a big category because also in terms of wine, people know it as such. But then the individual grapes, there's so many different ones, and there's so many shades of Lambrusco, not just in terms of coloring, but in terms of taste. And it's a really, I find it's a really exciting wine. It's so social and fun and good without being overly serious, right? And I think that's what people like as well. It's
I definitely agree. Now you said something. So you have 9 different varieties of Lambrusco on your estate, but you mentioned that part of what you're doing, what you're continuing to do with Venturini Baldini is lower yields. So that means you're limiting the vines per hectare. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So it's the way we plant, and it's then also the selection during the harvest. So but it's already as a natural function of the hills. You have a much lower density of our planting, and so it's all the reasons for this are sort of all the 3. So it's the hills, it's the density of the planting, but it's also a deliberate selection of the grapes, obviously.
You were saying
so to give you an idea, I don't know if that is interesting, but we have about 80 quintali of yield, which translates, I think, in 8,000 tons. And the typical big Lambrusco estate in the flatland has about 300 per hectare.
Oh wow!
So that's just to give you an idea of the proportion.
That gives me a great idea of the proportion. Now, quick question. I was just wondering. So, was 2015 when you moved full time to Italy, or had you been living in Italy for some time?
No. That's we moved around that time. So before we lived in London up till then.
So tell me a little bit about both, because Palermo and Emilia Romagna. So northwestern Sicily versus Emilia Romagna again are completely two different entities. It's not. They might both be in the same country, but they're worlds apart. So both of you coming to Emilia Romagna, it was a completely new experience. Tell me a little bit about that, how your wine adventure and how your Emilia Romagna adventure has been for these past 5 years.
It's been busy. It's been really busy. But no, I mean, honestly, I have to say a bit what you said as well before. Emilia is a very welcoming place. They're amazing people here, very hardworking, very innovative, lovely people, honestly, and we've really had a great welcome. So I'm cognizant of the fact that we're a bit the new kids on the block in a way, right? Because neither of us is from here, but we've made real friendships. We've found really nice, amazing people to work with, but also to develop personal friendships. And it's been really a good welcome, I have to say. My husband, who works in a different field, but still connected because he does a lot of food related work. So he spends a lot of time in Emilia, given the strong focus on the Food Valley and the food producing companies. So he's known Emilia a little bit from a different side, but it's really an amazing place, and I see the opportunity and the potential also to make it grow and to make it also to introduce it to other people, which maybe haven't discovered it yet, because of obviously there's so much beauty in Italy that there's a whole country on your plate. But Emilia has a lot on offer, and I think I'm the first ambassador to start promoting this.
So tell me, what do you love about Emilia? Tell me some of the things that, if you were to say, if you're coming to visit, and actually, you know what, we're going to talk a little bit about coming to visit you, but tell me what you would say that one would have to do, see, eat, experience.
Yeah, I think, you know this also from your point of view, but Emilia has been a little less discovered, let's put it this way. Also because it's, a big part of Emilia is not industrial in a negative sense, but it's a producing area with that produces a lot of other things other than tourism. So it was not a traditional tourist area, if I could say it like this. And in fact, I think it has remained very authentic, and it offers a slightly slower, less inflated Italy, because it is really where people live and work, and obviously then on the back of the tradition which we see in so many places in Italy. It's the same for Emilia. There's a lot of tradition to offer, but at the same time, it has not become overly touristy. And I think that is something that people really appreciate, a bit in connection with that slightly slower pace. So you have a lot of focus on food. You have very, very high excellence in terms of food production, and a lot of people are moving towards an organic production around us. So it's I think the food is an integral part of Emilia. It's probably the main reason why people think of it in the first place. But then again, like you said, there's a lot of art. Parma, Bologna, Reggio Emilia as well, the Collezione Maramotti, for example. That's
really one of my favorite collections.
Modena as well. Like I wouldn't want to leave out any of the cities. I mean, they really have. There's a lot of history that is to be discovered. The Motor Valley, for anyone who wants. I know my husband. He loves that part. So I think the whole automotive industry, that obviously is very exciting for a lot of people to visit as well. But I think it has a very broad offering, and I can I really see an increasing interest from abroad predominantly, but also in Italy, people are discovering it really as a very interesting area to go to.
I agree, and I think people want. I love Bologna. I think, and I love Parma, but I think people are finally, really wanting to spread the tentacles, so to speak, and really get into the different aspects of Emilia Romagna. It's one of my favorite things is the train station in Reggio Emilia. So that's the Calatrava building. It looks like a dinosaur bone, like a dinosaur spine sitting on the side of the highway. It's so beautiful.
It's beautiful, isn't it? Yeah. No, and that obviously has helped enormously. And, like you said, it's absolutely right. Like people, we discover things one step after another. So Bologna has obviously, especially with its art history, but with the architecture, everything, Bologna as it is, has done an amazing job also introducing our region to tourists. And slowly, I think people are also discovering the other parts and appreciate it. So let's talk. The Alta Velocità definitely helped.
The Alta Velocità helps. That train station is it's super cool. And I mean, also a lot of the little train. I mean, am a train nerd, so I love visiting any train station. Let's talk a little bit about hospitality. You were mentioning it, that people in Emilia Romagna are so, Italians in general have a beautiful reputation for being so welcoming, and Emilia Romagna and Emilia in particular has its own charm. But I also know now that you are opening a beautiful, your estate as also, I guess, a B&B of sorts.
Yes, that's right.
You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we have, as part of our, what I called rejuvenating of our estate, we've also created a luxury bed and breakfast. We have 11 rooms. And maybe to give you a word for you to imagine, it's a bit like luxurious simplicity. So we renovated buildings that date back to the 17th century. So we've paid a lot of attention to, maintaining the features, respecting the heritage. And then in terms of the interior, we've created something that is connected with what we're trying to do. So we're in nature, we're in an organic estate. Again, it goes back quite a long time in history, but it's still modern and open and friendly. So we've played a lot with linen and natural fabrics, and used modern versions of traditional materials or traditional, for example, ceramics. So I look forward to welcoming you, but I can send you a few pictures, but I think it turned out really nicely. It's almost like a world in itself. So people come here and it's immersed in nature. It's immersed in the winery. So you have to imagine you come here and you move all the way to the top level of our estate, where you have the villa of the Marchesi Manodori, going back to the foundations go back to the 17th century. You have our acetaia, which is one of the oldest in the region and the oldest.
You have an acetaia.
We do.
You didn't. Wow.
From the 17th century, yes.
So you're making balsamico as well.
Yes, we do. We have a brand which is called Acetaia di Canossa.
We have to take a pause here. Everybody, you need to understand, this is, this isn't...
Why I said I've been busy.
This isn't just wine we're talking about. We're talking about liquid gold. It's called Acetaia di Canossa.
Acetaia di Canossa, because our area is really the land of Canossa, Terre di Canossa, of Matilde di Canossa, this very formidable duchess from the 10th century, 11th century. So our acetaia is called Acetaia di Canossa, and we have I've actually sort of relaunched the packaging last year, which has a whole range of balsamic condiments, and then obviously aceto balsamico tradizionale, and condiments like balsamic pearls and
balsamic pearls.
Yeah.
Wow, I've never heard of that. Oh my god. Now I'm actually. Oh wow. Oh yes, I have heard of it. The perle.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
I think
they're quite neat. It's also really cute for decoration. So it's good. It's like two things in one, right? You have the taste and the visual appearance in one.
If people who are familiar with my podcast, my listeners, they've heard me talk about. I've interviewed some people about balsamico, and I think everybody knows how precious and incredible, and to be honest, I will say, life-changing 2 drops of balsamico can be. when it's traditional. I mean, it's I'll make a frittata now, and I'll just add 2 little drops, and it's just boom, changes
all the difference. I can't eat vanilla ice cream anymore without balsamic.
Oh wow, It is
delicious. It is delicious because it gives you that sweet and sour combination, which I adore. And it's so vanilla ice cream. Next time you have a really nice vanilla ice cream, just a few drops of your balsamic vinegar, it will make all the difference.
I'm gonna have to try that now. So the acetaia you can visit. It's on the estate, correct?
Yes, that's right. So the acetaia is in what I described to you earlier, which is in this upper part of the estate where you have our old villa, and you have the outbuildings that we have already renovated to create our bed and breakfast. And so it's really the whole idea is to create what I call dimore emiliane, so a little borgo, a context where various buildings together create really a haven in nature, right? A haven of privacy. And the acetaia is part of that. So it's again also in a building from the 17th century. We've been quite lucky because we had an earthquake, I think it was 2012.
Yeah,
and
May 2012.
Nothing, and luckily it remained completely. And so we lost two buildings, which one completely collapsed and the other one was really, really affected. But the acetaia miraculously didn't get affected at all. So it is integral as it was. We have never changed anything. So it's a very beautiful, unique place. So it's open to the public. And what we obviously offer, which is part of, which is a main reason why people come, and also really important to us, that all of our guests obviously have a tour of the winery, of the acetaia. They have a tasting tour of the wines. And then we, often what we find is that people come for a few days. They want to eat well. So we have a lot of beautiful, amazing restaurants in our area. They want to visit other producers, either of prosciutto or parmigiano. So it's a really immersion in
Emilia,
exploring Emilian excellence is what Emilia has on offer. Yeah.
Eccellenze Emiliane. Yeah, it sounds beautiful, and it also sounds delicious. Now, speaking of delicious, you mentioned adding drops of you were talking balsamic and ice cream. That was lovely. I figured that since I hope by this point that everybody's listening, they're ready to buy that bottle of Lambrusco. I wanted to ask you, since I have my lovely bottle of Cal del Vento, what should I have it with? What are how are you pairing Lambrusco these days?
So it depends a little bit which one you're looking at, because what I said before is Lambrusco is actually incredibly versatile and different. So the Cal del Vento that you have is a very delicate wine. It's fresh. It has just the right level of acidity. Sapido is also, I don't know how to translate that in English, to be honest. I don't know what the right word is, but it's very
really tasty.
I guess, but you will taste it and then you tell me what the right word is. But but it's very drinkable. But it's both obviously as an aperitif, it works really nicely with all types of fish. Tartare, for example, tuna tartare, fish dishes. But to be honest, I personally also like it with meat. It's, looking at it in it's very pale, it's very delicate, sparkling rosé. I think people maybe think that it doesn't work with meat, but it does, because it has the Lambrusco in it as well. It's not just a sparkling rosé. It has that nice taste of Lambrusco that, Lambrusco is also loved with the acidity to balance out very tasty dishes, sometimes slightly fattier dishes. So it's traditionally, obviously, pasta bolognese, pasta the lasagne, the meat dishes that Emilia Romagna has. So if you think of maybe abroad, you have a barbecue. Lambrusco is perfect with barbecue, but it goes really well also with spicier cuisines that will be also outside of Europe or the States. So I'm thinking of an Indian cuisine or a Thai cuisine, where sometimes you play a lot with spices, and actually it's a nice sort of counterbalance to that as well.
So what you're saying is that Lambrusco goes well with everything. I just think that we should just say that. So it doesn't really matter.
No, I think what I think is amazing is that there's so many different types of wines, and wine pairing is very interesting and exciting. And what I'm very pleased with is that Lambrusco is back to where I think it should be. So today you decide to drink Lambrusco. The other day you prefer maybe a Sicilian white or a Primitivo. So there's a big choice, and it puts it back to be a serious wine in the way it is, not in it's recognized for what it is, and not necessarily discounted per se, because this is part of the work that we still have to do, that we need to reintroduce it as a serious wine. But I think, us and several other producers are producing wines that are absolutely back to that level. And I think people are discovering it. So they see it in one day you drink something that is completely different, and the other day it's a Lambrusco. So it really depends. But it's a very social, happy wine, that's for sure.
I agree. Julia, I'm so happy I'm going to say something so cheesy, but I'm so happy to speak with you, and your love of Emilia is as effervescent as your wines, and that it bubbles over. And I think, it's a beautiful, your passion for making wine and your passion for the region that you're in is incredible. I'm really looking forward to coming up and spending some time. I did not realize that your estate, Roncolo, 1888 I didn't realize how Emilia encompassing it was. It is really full immersion, Emilia.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I think that's actually a great way of saying it. I should, I'll copy that. Full immersion, Emilia. Love that.
I'll give you the copyright. You can take that.
Thank you. I've just assumed the copyright. I've taken it.
Okay, we'll talk about that off record. No. Well, it was a pleasure having you here, and thank you again for speaking about your wines.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really a pleasure. I hope I didn't blabber on about
not at all.
I know I can get very excited about this, but no, it was a real pleasure speaking to you, and I look forward to welcoming you very soon on your next trip to Emilia Romagna.
It will be sooner than you think. Now, before you go, I just want you to tell everybody what your website is and your Instagram, so that they can follow along.
Sure. Our Instagram is Venturini_Baldini. Then we have also an Instagram for both the hospitality and the acetaia, and it's Roncolo 1888 and acetaia di Canossa, one word. And our website is venturinibaldini.it.
I'm going to be sharing all of that in the podcast notes. So if you're familiar with my podcast notes or not, I usually at the inside the data on this, you'll see links to Venturini Baldini, to the acetaia, to Roncolo 1888, to Julia, and you'll also see links to the story I'm going to write about this. So thank you all for listening. Thank you, Julia. Thank you again.
Thank you, Erica. It's a pleasure.
Ciao tutti.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Ciao Bella. If you'd like to know more about today's guest, please visit ciaobella.co and click on the podcast link, or go directly to ciaobella.co/podcast. Want more Italy? You can find all my episodes on iTunes and Spotify and Stitcher. When you have time, subscribe to iTunes and rate the podcast. What are you waiting for? And if you want to be part of the podcast, email me or DM me your Italy questions. To learn more about me and my work, go to my website, ericafirpo.com, and follow my Italy adventures on Instagram at ericafirpo. Ciao, Bella! And a very big thank you and hug to Massimiliano Yonta and Disc to Disc Studios, the producers of Ciao Bella, who continue to make me sound and feel great.